Hello, this is POPeration. I am neither Eric nor Stacey. I'm actually Frank, the behind-the-scenes guy here at POPeration. Eric and Stacey took the week off to enjoy the holiday, so I decided to put together a little best of show for you guys. These are some fun segments from shows over the last 6 months, so sit back, relax, and enjoy our next episode. This first segment is actually from our very first POPeration episode, And the Loser Is. And Eric and Stacey talk all about the red carpet.
Okay, so we're back. And the loser is the audience. Award
okay, that's
shows
my
and,
working title. That's my not.
Oh, that's the title. We're keeping it.
Aye.
And before we kind of deliver the final prognosis on this one last topic we wanted to get to was the red carpet. These shows that, and you know, and you're about to say, you don't watch the award shows at the beginning, you watch them earlier. I don't. I don't
Well, I will
watch
tell
it.
you.
I used to. Joan
I was
Rivers.
going to say, back in the day,
Joan Rivers,
that used to be
watch.
the only thing that I would watch live. Because, as I said, I can't watch award shows. But I could watch the red carpet. I have a problem now, and with doing it because I feel like I've gotten older, and I'm also a little bit more sensitive to what they're doing. You know, it's we don't care who you are or what your brain is like. Who are you wearing? And it's so shallow. It is so shallow. Again, I don't need everybody to go up there and say, so tell me, you know, what's your favorite memory from childhood? I don't need that. But my point is not to go all the way that way.
Well, and then they ask the nominees if they're excited. Are you excited?
Durr.
Who are you wearing?
Durr.
Yeah.
You're at the Oscars. I mean, of course, or you're at the Emmys. You're at your industry's award. You're at the BAFTA. Whatever it is, of course you're excited. But the whole red carpet thing, but I used to because I was judgy. And I loved the idea because Joan Rivers, she nailed it. She created that whole, she's the first one who went out there and did that red carpet thing like it's done. You know, she started, whatever they do now, where they have 3 or 4 people on the carpet, at one point it was just her.
And none of them are funny. And none of them are funny. I mean, that's the thing about Joan is that she was funny.
And I have a problem with that. Taking too seriously. People taking either A, what they're doing too seriously, B, what they're wearing too seriously.
So 2 things on that.
Or the award too seriously.
So 2 things on that.
It's a damn Oscar, or it's an Emmy, or it's a Tony, or whatever. It's not, you're not saving anybody's life.
True. And they all got these dresses for free.
Yeah, they did.
Because these designers, you know.
All the jewels, everything is rented.
Or free.
Borrowed.
Well,
borrowed.
Borrowed.
It's not,
yeah,
they're not gifts. They have to give them back.
They have to give them back.
They're borrowed. Yeah,
but, you know, these designers want nothing more than to dress actress du jour on the red carpet.
I'm wearing Givenchy. Okay.
Because
they get a pop.
And those designers absolutely expect that question to be asked, or they're going to stop giving them all those dresses. So there's this weird quid pro quo going on.
Okay, so maybe that's the thing. Maybe those are the winners. Maybe it's okay. So it's maybe the advertisers a little bit, but it's the networks because they get the advertiser money, and then it's the designers of the outfits because of the red carpet.
More than anything else, and some of their rich clients. I mean, you and I are not going to watch these things and go, ooh, I think I'll go to Oscar de la Renta and pick up a frock this weekend. I mean,
Melba, get Oscar on the phone. Thanks. Get Giorgio.
The other thing, though, is wasn't there some kind of social media campaign last year or the year before? It was like #AskHerMore, and it was just basically all about, like, when you're talking to these women on the red carpet, please get beyond what are you wearing and you know, tell us about your hair and tell us about your shoes. I think there was this kind of thing.
And here's the thing is, so no, I don't need to know all about, you know, everything in your life. I don't really, I don't care.
I don't give a shit about you.
I don't care at all. You were there to entertain me in one aspect or another.
Dance, monkey, dance.
That's right. And so I don't care. At the same time, don't sit there and talk to me about I'm working on my craft and not be able to answer the question, you know, so which song on your album that was nominated for Album of the Year is the most meanwood to you?
Yeah, or why do you think this movie is resonating with so many people?
Right. I think that that would be interesting. That would be insightful.
Yeah.
But again, that's not what these shows are trying to do.
And then put them in the 360 thing where we can see the dress from every single angle.
Please turn your back and let me see your ass. It is the most... That's what I have a hard time with it now, is it's really, they stand there and they're looking lovely and they're answering the questions. Say, turn around. Bite me. Who the fuck are you? What do you mean turn around? I mean, they do because it's a pony show and they do it. And that's the thing is, so what are these for? They're to make money. It's like everything is to make money.
Well, and I think it's interesting that we're ending on the whole red carpet piece because it is the shallowest part of the entire experience. And which is why I don't watch them. If somebody's, if I want to appreciate the way somebody looks or whatever they decided to wear to the Oscars, I'll see it during the show.
But I do think, I will say this about the red carpet show, and one reason you're talking about they're not funny anymore, and because people don't want to take risks. They want to be vanilla. They want to be that Dick Clark / Ryan Seacrest kind of, I am this nice person and we're not. Joan Rivers.
And not at all gay. What are you wearing?
Yeah. Not at all. Bite your tongue. So, I mean, Joan Rivers, and again, she judged. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's missing. That sounds awful because you're not going to sit there and say, well, that's not a color I would have chosen for your skin tone, but.
Hello, Joan. What are you wearing? I hope you didn't pay for it. Yeah.
But I mean, that's a humanness, and that's what's kind of missing. It is kind of robotic now. It's like, are you excited? Yeah. They nod yes. It's pause for their nod. Mm-hmm. What are you wearing? Pause for them to tell the name. Well, you look lovely. Good luck, and there they go. And that's literally I've just done the red carpet. I could record it.
Well, you could do that. You're not going to be the host, but you could definitely do the red carpet.
I mean, I could be judgy.
But I would love that.
But
you would be an American phenomenon. You would make no friends.
You lost your freaking mind.
Oh, Hollywood would never have you back. But the audience would love you.
It's like that. I Married a Millionaire. Or what is it? Joe Millionaire? Remember that? It was a reality show.
Yeah.
And the whole premise, it was like all of those Bachelor ones. And the whole thing
but then they found out he was dirt poor.
He's really dirt poor. Yeah. But at the whole time, they thought he was Joe Millionaire, and so they could never play that. You can't do that game. That's not an ongoing show. No. You've shot your wad in one go, and that would be me. I would love to see
the women who would show up for season 2 of Joe Millionaire. I would love to meet them.
You know what they had to do? They had to go across the pond. They went to Europe.
Oh,
and
great.
It was Joe Millionaire in the Europe. And that's because they couldn't do it in America, because American was like, hell no.
In the Europe.
Did I say in the Europe?
You did.
Hashtag Merca.
Okay. So, final prognosis. Award shows, go.
I think that they are probably a necessary evil. I think you're right. I think that people need to feel like they get appreciated. And unfortunately, I think that sometimes it's just everybody standing in a circle and everybody's patting each other on the back, and the rest of us get to watch. And so it's not always the most fun for the audience. But I think they're not going to go anywhere, and I think there's going to be even more. I think there's going to be. It's just they're like rabbits.
So my final prognosis is there's probably too many of them, but, I would also say to people who don't like them, don't watch them.
We could have started at that, and this podcast would have been 1 minute long.
It was a lot shorter. But I do think that there is a germ of, some of them are, none of them are more important than any other of them. But I think it is important to reward quality, especially if it can make movies and music and TV that is good, profitable.
If you give somebody an aspiration, and I think sometimes it does, those who are not cynical like us, it is still aspirational to win an award in whatever industry you're in.
Sure, yeah. But I think that, again, I've also heard people say, well, it's just an honor to be nominated. But they'll also say, it's really about the work. I'm much more... the Brits are very, and I believe them. I believe some of the Brits when they say, look, when I nail a scene and I know it's good, that feels better to me than walking up on any stage.
And that's a whole other show. British actors British artists versus American artists and how they look at their art.
Yeah.
That is another discussion.
Well, it's all about how seriously they take themselves.
It's exactly. All right. And so there we go.
In the future on POPeration, there'll be that. We'll do that.
Yeah.
Our next segment addresses racism in films and comes from our Hot Button Topics episode. Eric talks about the thriller comedy movie Get Out, and Stacey provides some additional insight to its director, Jordan Peele. It's right here on Best of POPeration.
And we are back.
This is POPeration.
And we are talking about hot button topics. Stuff that can make your Thanksgiving dinner uncomfortable. More uncomfortable, I should say.
Yeah.
Because drunk Uncle Albert, what are you going to do?
Well.
So anyway, we're talking about movies, for the most part, that take on these big controversial issues, but they do it, if not in usually in a unique way, if I say so. In a unique way, they do it well, it's compelling, but it still makes their point. And I think the first one I have not seen, so I can't talk about this, but I've heard a lot about it, and I do have a lot of respect for the filmmakers. And this topic is all over the place.
Yes.
And it's racism.
Yeah.
So what's the good example?
So the example that I chose, a film that and it's very recent, came out this year, that really addresses racism in a way that meets all of your qualifications, is a film called Get Out. And Jordan Peele of Key and Peele is the director of this film. And it is not a polemic about race relations. It's a horror movie with traces of comedy and sci-fi. I don't think Jordan Peele could make a movie that wasn't a little funny. Like, he's just funny.
He
lives in funny.
Key and Peele?
Yes. Oh, hysterical.
And here's my thing about what I thought part of their brilliance was in their ability to do what we're talking about. Now, I will say in Key and Peele, a lot of times the topic was race.
Sure.
But that's what they're dealing. I mean,
they are black men living in America, so it's on their mind a lot. Be there.
But they were able to, in so many different ways, in so many different vignettes and skits, hit upon it in a different way, with a different perspective, so that it made you laugh because it was a comedy show, but it also made you think. Bloody hell, it made you think. And so...
Or just examine the double standards that we live with in our society. Yes. That was a big one.
Which I think, again, a white girl, that is helpful to me. I will tell you right now, I am very much, to a certain extent, entitled, because I'm privileged because of how
And the biggest privilege that comes with privilege is the ability to be completely ignorant and oblivious about your privilege.
Exactly.
I mean, that's one of the big things about the way that works. So, you know what? I'm not even going to try to be spoiler free when I talk about this movie. So if you have not seen Get Out, just fast forward this, or just put pause on it and listen to it another time, because there's no way to really talk about how this film deals with racism without just kind of getting into what it's about.
I mean, come on.
So here we go. Spoilers are coming, and they're coming hard.
Rosebud is the sled. Okay.
Okay, so the setup of this movie, if you've just seen the preview, is exactly the same as Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, which is a film that we just talked about a couple weeks back. Black man is going home with white girlfriend to meet her parents.
For the first time.
And she has neglected to tell her parents that she's bringing home a black boyfriend. And he's a little nervous about this.
Okay, there's your plot. There's your
setup.
Setup.
Right?
Yep.
Now, what kind of happens when he gets there is that these parents are super duper liberal. They just don't blink an eye. They embrace him. It's so nice to meet you. What's your name?
See, I'm already suspicious at this point.
Right?
Just throwing that out.
And you should be. And, at one point, the biggest chuckle that it got for me is, and by the way, the parents are Catherine Keener and Bradley Whitford from The West Wing. Play the parents.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, play the parents.
Catherine Keener is a 40-year-old German. The 40-year-old. I'm sorry. Yeah, virgin. It's the word I was looking for.
Yes, Catherine Keener from the 40-year-old virgin and Being John Malkovich.
Sorry. Oh, yeah.
Hi, Catherine. The 40-year-old German. Hashtag 40-year-old German.
That's a movie that's coming out next year.
Okay.
I don't know.
So anyway, Bradley Whitford and this young black man who is dating his daughter with his entire blessing. He's walking around and he says, I would have voted for Obama a third time if I could. And you just kind of, and the look on this kid's face is just like, okay, fine.
Trying too hard. Hashtag trying too hard.
But they're trying a little bit too hard. And you find out very quickly in this film, and here's where the big spoilers come, is that this young girl, Allison Williams, from HBO's Girls, and also played Peter Pan in the live musical version. Yeah. Allison Williams, Brian's daughter, plays their daughter, and she has been bringing home black men on the regular for a long time.
So she's got
and what happens is when she brings them home, Mom finds a way to talk them into hypnosis, and they become hypnotized. And eventually, there's this whole sci-fi dungeon in the basement where they take these people's brains out of their heads and supplant them into brains of older white people who want to be young again. And so their brains leave their bodies, and they're basically there's these young black people who have old white brains inside of them.
Poor things. I'm so sorry.
So they had a grandfather and a grandmother that they talk about, but you never reference. They also have a young black groundskeeper and a young black maid who you find out eventually are grandma and grandpa in their new young black bodies. And one of the reasons why they choose black people to do this specifically is because they believe that black people are more gifted physically, athletically, sexually, all of the gifts that black people have in terms of the physical realm, but that white people are more, and artistically is the other one that they kind of see that black people can excel there, but that they're completely disposable. And so there's this creepy scene before you figure out exactly what's going on. And the parents say to the girl, well, our big barbecue's this weekend. And the girl's like, oh, can you call it off? And they're like, no, we do this every year. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. You're going to have to survive the barbecue. Well, they were the most awkward conversations at the barbecue. All of these older white couples are asking all of these just hugely personal questions like, is it true that they're better in bed, black men? And they're like, and she's like, I'm really sorry. But of course, what you find out later is that they're all basically auditioning to be the one who, yes, it's an interview process. So they can take his brain out of his body and put their own brain inside. So the woman who wants to know if they're better in bed, she's there with her invalid husband who can't satisfy her anymore. It is so, it's by the time you get to the end of this thing, it is just so like, oh my God, this is what's going on. And it's bad,
it's a very different kind of horror story. It's funny because you look at some horror stories where it's about the homicidal maniac coming at you with an axe when you're at a camp. And you go into the room that you shouldn't have gone into to begin with. Yep. This is completely different. This is one of those that you don't expect, and that makes it even all the more horrible.
Yeah. So it was framed as a horror movie, but most people didn't get beyond that Guess Who's Coming to Dinner kind of setup, which is enough of a setup in 2017. That's a sad commentary on society, that the setup of a 50-year-old movie still works.
Yes.
And it would still cause that much anxiety. But it just takes it in a completely different direction. And you're so wrapped up in the psychological horror of this. When he decides it's finally time to escape this house of horror and try to get out of there, he's trapped. By the way, the daughter is in on it the whole time.
Okay.
And actually...
that makes sense if she keeps bringing
She
new
keeps
ones.
bringing them home.
Yeah.
But at first you're like, does she know that this is... But yes, she totally works it. And she actually faked being a lesbian at one point to bring home the young girl who became grandma.
Wow.
So she has no, innate attraction to these men. So when you say she has a type, she has a victim type.
She has a job.
But she is just as bad as everyone else in the entire family. And it's just, and there are certain things that happen. The whole first half of this movie, you're like, this is weird. And then it all adds up. Like once you get this crazy, this is what's going on. That's what it's about.
Well, and that I'll say from Key and Peele, some of the skits, you would sit there and go, oh my gosh, their brains are so... That's an amazing thing for somebody to think of. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm thinking here is like this. I get this.
Yeah.
I get this.
And if you listen to this, and a lot of white audiences came away from this going, oh, come on. I mean, obviously from a scientific standpoint, it's far-fetched. We don't know how to do brain transplants.
Right.
That's a whole other...
That's not the point. No,
but even from a sociological standpoint, they were like, that's a little much. And I tell you what, every black person I've talked to who's gone to see this movie said there are parts of it that rang so true to me from a psychological standpoint about how I am treated and viewed in this society. It really was an amazing statement about the current state of race relations, but told in this incredibly inventive, wackadoo kind of way.
That's awesome. That's an awesome...
It just
Peele's
blew
brain
my mind.
is amazing.
Yeah. And then I have to, before before I leave this is something that everyone always talks about. It's a small role, but this young man's best friend in the world is a TSA agent who is funny as hell. And he said from the very beginning, don't you go to that white girl's house. Like, he's just, he's like, he has a bad feeling about this from the very, very end. And at the end of the movie, he plays into the finale in this way that is just genius. This is one part that I will leave, just in case there's people who have not seen this movie but stuck with it despite all the big kind of reveal halfway through. I will not reveal the very end. Only that after you see this movie, Google what the original ending was and what the new ending they replaced it with was and why. Because I think that if you had seen the original ending that Jordan Peele wrote, it would have just been all the fun, which is kind of a weird word to put to this, but because all the revelations are so crazy, it is kind of fun that way when the mystery kind of gets revealed and this is what's going on. You're like, wow. If the original ending had been in there, it would have been a little bit too much of a dose of reality. Okay. But the new ending, the way that it worked and the way that this TSA agent figures into the ending of the film is just brilliant. Excellent. I highly recommend it. Yeah. And
it's on my list.
And if you have never seen the movie, it's okay to come back into the show now. We're not going to talk about the spoilers anymore. Come on back. Come back.
Our next segment caused a lot of talk when it was released. Pulled from our show Guilty Displeasures, Eric and Stacey talk about why they both hate Moulin Rouge. And then Stacey draws a target on her back when they talk about her dislike of the most popular TV show airing on HBO today.
Okay, we are back talking about things we hate that everybody else seems to love, and thus we are in the minority, and either we have to keep our mouths shut or we have to constantly defend our opinions.
We call this show Guilty Displeasures.
Correct, because these are items, what are they? There's television and movies that people love, that are popular. And yet, Eric and I hate them.
Not so much.
Hate them.
Not so much.
So on this one, you have one that I'm going to have to be honest with you. I agree with you 100%.
Good. Well,
so this is not going to be an argument. Correct.
Okay, so we'll always have each other on this one. When the hate mail starts to flood in,
we'll have each other.
We can hold each other's hands and weather the storm because I hate Baz Luhrmann's Moulin Rouge.
I am so with you. I couldn't be more with you. It was a nightmare.
Awful movie.
It was a nightmare.
Why do people love this movie, Stacey? Why? Why do they love it? God.
But I still see it on my Facebook feed. Somebody will have said, "I just rewatched Moulin Rouge. I can't remember how much I love that." And I'm just thinking, ugh, don't ever invite me to your house. It was a nightmare watching it, and I kept watching it because I felt like I've already seen this much. I need to see the whole thing so that I know that I hated it.
Yeah. So of course, the first time you see Nicole Kidman in this movie, she's singing "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend."
In a weird way.
Yeah, and so this is probably my biggest problem with it, is that it says it's a musical. It's a jukebox musical.
Correct. It is not original.
Other songs,
which I never liked that.
Purposes them, and not well, because if I'm sorry, and I know I'm an old movie snob and I like old movies, and that some people think that's weird. If you have seen Marilyn Monroe do "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend" from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, this thing that Nicole Kidman's got a good voice. She can sing.
Correct.
She's a good actor. She can, she's earned every bit of her Oscar in the hours. She's fabulous. But it just doesn't hold a candle, and it's because the story does not anchor anything. I mean, you found out who Marilyn Monroe's character was a little bit watching her do "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend."
Correct.
You understood the kind of entertainer she was and the kind of charisma she had. This just seemed to be charisma-less. It had no soul. It was pretty, but the other one that killed me was they're talking about, hills or music or something, and Ewan McGregor starts singing "The Hills Are Alive" from The Sound of Music. Okay, you're not in the Alps. You're in Paris. There's no reason for you to sing that song. And by the way, at that point in history, The Sound of Music did not exist. So you weren't referencing anything. It was just so stupid.
It was almost like they had all these songs that they really, really liked, and they thinly put a story to tie them together.
Yes.
But I felt like it was an acid trip gone wrong.
I hated the directing. Can scene.
I hated the directing so much, I can't tell you. Even now, I'm getting flashbacks.
I feel like Baz Luhrmann does so much better when he doesn't have a lot of money. When he's forced to be creative without being able to just pour a bunch of money into camera tricks. Because the only movie of his I liked The Great Gatsby. And it surprised me that I liked his version of The Great Gatsby, but I did. It took me by surprise. Hated Romeo plus Juliet. Awful. And really liked, though, Strictly Ballroom.
Loved Strictly
Before
Ballroom.
he had a lot of money.
Strictly Ballroom had a heart.
Yes.
And maybe that was part of it.
That was it. Well, he had to have a script because he couldn't play all these tricks.
Correct. But Strictly Ballroom was amazing, and that's one of my favorite little jewels. But it had heart, and it felt like these are real people. And
he still got to play a few camera trips. That close up when the woman, you can't make up your own steps, hilarious.
Correct, but it made sense.
Yes,
it made sense because that was the perception that.
Yeah.
But Moulin Rouge, I just felt it was disjointed, and I felt out of control. Well, I didn't. There was no heart. There should certainly
The only
heart
song I enjoyed in the entire thing was the original song that they plugged in at the end. They did write one song for this movie, and it was kind of the tender love ballad between Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman, and it was actually almost moving, although I was so sick to my stomach after experiencing the rest of it to that point. Okay, I like Jim Broadbent as an actor. Don't need to hear him sing Like a Virgin ever again in my life.
What the hell was that?
And that can scene.
I didn't like the makeup. I didn't like it at all.
No, it didn't move me a bit.
But there was no heart.
Not an iota. It had no heart.
It had no heart. It wasn't real. It was everybody was an actor. And that's what I felt like. Everybody is clearly an actor here.
Yeah.
Not even in the picture they're an actor. They're acting like whatever it is. There was no real. No. I didn't connect with anybody. I didn't think it was pretty. I thought it was just.
And weirdly, during that last scene when they sing that one original song from the whole thing, the acting style became a lot more naturalistic. It almost looked like they'd taken outtakes from the set, where Nicole Kidman just started laughing at something and used that. And maybe she was performing, or maybe that was an outtake from the set, because everything else was so false. Yeah. When something actually rang true, but it was too late.
Yeah, I didn't know. That is, I'm with you 100%.
Okay, well, we're going to get flooded with hate mail on that one.
I know it because I have a lot of
if anyone
friends
listens.
and acquaintances. That's true. You're assuming we have people listening.
Exactly. If you're out there, send us hate mail so that we know you exist.
I didn't care for it at all.
Okay.
At all.
Now we're going to wrap up this show with your second guilty displeasure. And if you didn't write us hate mail about the one before, we're going to get it from this one. Now, I watch this.
I know you do.
Don't.
I know you do. I don't watch it, and I've only seen one episode. So that's people are first going to jump down my throat. Well, if you've only seen one episode, then you don't really get it all. Okay. But here's the deal. I couldn't watch any more than the first episode.
Okay.
I couldn't push myself through any more episodes to get to where you are now, where it's not awful.
But you watched the entire first episode.
I watched the entire first episode of Game of Thrones.
And hated it. I
hated it so much that my arms hurt because they had been crossed so hard.
So is it more than it's just in that fantasy genre and that's not your thing?
No. I do sci-fi.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that.
Lord of the Rings doesn't, because it's less sci-fi and it's more that Lord of the Ringsy kind of.
Yeah, it's that weird period.
Wizards
funky,
and dragons and
No, I don't have a problem with that. I don't. I really don't.
Okay. So what?
It not? It's not my cup of tea, but that is not what my problem is.
Okay. What's your problem?
The misogyny.
Ooh, say more about that.
Here's my deal. The first episode, and why I couldn't get to any more episodes, was that there was a lot. It was very rapey.
Okay.
And it was very sexual and explicitly sexual with women as victims. And it was, I was so uncomfortable. And when I have this conversation and I say, that's why I get this, but the women turned out to be the stronger. All the men are, they die or they're weaker because the women are in control, blah-de, 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 blue. Okay, that's great. I'm glad that the women got through the abuse and are wreaking havoc now with their dragons. Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yep.
I just have a problem with victimization and abuse as entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt. I felt abused during that first episode.
So I'll have to be reminded of what happened in the very first episode. Did Daenerys's brother marry her off to the to Khal Drogo?
So she was stripped, and they had to have the sex in front of people. So
the incestuous thing was there.
Everything was there, but she had
multiple
no power.
brother sister incest, because then
she had no power.
At the end of that first episode is when you see Jaime and Cersei having sex at the top of the tower.
Yeah, there was that
when
the kid dropped.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a whole other thing, and I'm like, oh, we're killing kids. Now I think he survived.
Paralyzed from the neck down to this day.
Okay.
In this fifth or sixth season.
Again, it was just so, and I get that one reason that episode was like that was to get people's interest.
Sure.
And you want to get men's interest, so they'll watch on and on, because you don't want to have a strong woman in the beginning, because men will go, ugh, it's a chick flick, and they'll turn away. I get the reasoning behind it. I don't necessarily say that that's valid, but I get the reasoning, and I get that these books were written by a man.
Yeah.
Got it.
And probably not a very enlightened feminist, George R.R. Martin.
He doesn't look like that, but I hate to judge a book by its cover.
Well, but I think you're right. I mean, I watch Game of Thrones. I like Game of Thrones. I get everything that you're saying. Absolutely.
And as I said, I have friends, a lot of them women, who love it, have never missed an episode, and they get frustrated with me because they're like, but you don't understand. The women are strong now, and they're the strongest ones. And I get it.
And as someone who's seen it, though, I will say they kind of have to go through the rapey shit to get there. They're strong because they're survivors, and they have to survive a lot of bullshit.
Right.
Like a lot of them have been raped.
Yes, I know.
Sansa has now been, the little redhead who was too little, she was a little girl in the episode that you saw. She's now grown into quite an actress, but she was married off to a psychopath and raped repeatedly before she became the strong woman she is now.
See, there is
that. I mean,
it's that. But did any of the men have to be raped before they were strong?
Yes, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, one of them, Theon, raped and castrated, and now is kind of slowly coming into his own, thanks to his lesbian sister who was never raped. But is...
Well, that's good that she didn't get raped and then became lesbian. That's nice for that. Seriously.
She was born that way.
Exactly. That's my whole point. But here's my thing. Okay, is he the only guy?
Who's been raped? I can't swear to that because it's that kind of show.
It's that kind of show. And I guess that's part of my... I have a problem with rape being entertainment. Because at this point, if everybody's been raped, and if especially every female's been raped in order to make them stronger, that is a cliched plot device at this point.
Yeah,
but it's not. Why can't?
No, I don't want us to get hate mail for the wrong reasons. Not every, So Brienne of Tarth is the other character that you had not met because she wasn't there yet.
Okay.
Very tall woman, basically wants to be
I know who
a
that
knight.
actress is.
Gwendolyn Christie plays her, and wants to be a knight, basically. And not gay. I mean, they've made it very clear that she is, she's heterosexual. But she gave me a lot of the gay vibes originally because she's essentially in drag. She walks around in armor, very male kind of, and she's a swords woman.
That's great.
She kicks ass. And there are, as you look at, who the characters are now who are likely to ascend, the strong Cersei, who is not a good person by any stretch of the imagination, but very strong. Daenerys, Sansa, Arya, her younger sister, who is now probably mentally unwell at this point, but she's got this list of enemies of people who, she holds responsible for the deaths in her family, and she's out for revenge. And it's kind of... it's that kind of show. It's very satisfying to see her cross another name off her list when it gets there because you are rooting for her even though she's a little crazy.
And I understand that and I appreciate that. And I don't necessarily, like I do judge people about the Big Bang Theory. I don't necessarily judge people on this because I get it. I understand it. I also understand television and producers and why you have to have things that are this kind of explicit, especially in this day and age, to compete with anything else. But it doesn't mean I have to watch it, and it doesn't mean I have to like it.
Yeah.
And so it is my guilty displeasure in that I do know it is extraordinarily popular, but I don't like it. And yes, I only gave it that one episode chance, but I'm okay with that. There are other things I can spend my time on. But that was my problem, though. I felt victimized at the end.
Yeah. I mean, so it's interesting. So
that's not
I
how
watch
spend
it.
my time.
I'm a fan, and yet I don't argue with anything that you've said because
Yeah.
it is that kind of a show. I mean, it's nothing I would let a kid watch.
Right.
It's not you. I think you have to be an adult and you have to be able to kind of separate and know what's what. The brother who raped his sister in the very first episode, in episode 5, I believe, has molten gold poured over his head, and that's how he dies because he wants a crown, and they're like, "We'll give you a crown," and they just, And I will say it was very satisfying to watch him go.
Right, and I think that they do give those who are the abusers apparently do get comeuppance.
Yes,
and
it is framed. So I say
biblical.
that only to say
That's nice.
It's framed as abuse. It is framed as abuse. You're not supposed to cheer this on. No one is raped righteously, and yet
there is a lot of it.
There's a lot of it. It goes there in that show quite a bit. And
and again, this is I choose not to spend my time with that.
Yep.
But I watched it and I was so disgusted and turned off by it. I couldn't imagine watching more. And again, I female friends love it and look at me and say, "But you should have watched more because the women." They take over, yada yada. Great, I'm glad. I can't put myself through that to come out to the other side.
The journey to get there.
The journey to get there is not worth it for me.
Yeah.
So that's where I am. And again, I understand that it's controversial, and I understand that I am in the minority. I get it, but
Next up, Stacey and Eric play a little game from our sequels episode, in which they name movies that, for one reason or another, either didn't, or more to the point, shouldn't have a sequel, and then come up with a plausible sequel for it. It's a dive into Eric and Stacey's creativity on the best of POPeration.
So, we're going to play a little game.
oh dear.
We're going to play a little game, and the game that we're going to play is you're gonna give me a movie that you think it would be either funny or difficult or challenging to come up with a sequel to.
Okay.
And then I'm going to do the same to you.
Okay.
So
I'm not good at improv, so well done you.
So as we were thinking about this, we were saying, the movies that the challenge about doing this is you don't want to create a sequel for a movie where A, everyone died at the end, or the best people died at the end because they can't be in the sequel.
Right.
Unless, their death was a fake. Oh my gosh, they live on.
Right, yeah.
But that would be stupid.
It was all a dream.
Because that ruins the first movie, right?
Correct.
When you pull crap like
Correct.
that. The other thing is if a movie's just so good, why fuck it up by trying to
and we are going to talk
bad?
about movies that didn't need a sequel or shouldn't have had a sequel.
Yeah. And do they really fuck up the originals, or do the originals stand on their own?
Yeah, that depends.
And you can't,
Sometimes.
sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
So.
Okay. All right. So who goes first?
Go ahead.
I'm going to give you your movie?
You're going to give me my movie, so.
Now, I don't. Okay. You can totally do this. You can totally do this when I'm telling you. And my movie, my challenge to you, Jesus Christ Superstar Part 2.
Part
do
2.
It. Go.
Okay, so that's difficult because he's in the title.
He is in the title, but if you recall, but therein lies the challenge. But also, if you saw Jesus Christ Superstar, which I totally think everybody should see because it's so fun, either you're going to like it because it's 70s and campy, or you're going to enjoy it and appreciate it for it's just a lot of fun.
Okay.
But remember, there's kind of a two-parter. There's the hippies that are making the story go, and then there's the story of Jesus Christ himself.
Yeah.
So you could go either way, because at the very end, after they've crucified Jesus, all of the actors except Jesus get back on the bus and go back to whatever commune they came from.
Okay, so my sequel for Jesus Christ Superstar, maybe we just call it Superstar.
Oh, okay.
What it is, it's those same hippies 10 years later in power suits in the 80s, all creating mega churches and turning religion into
so they go to that same desert
that
where Jesus died
and make a mega church with TV cameras and they make a shit ton of money because you asked an atheist to create a sequel
isn't that good of me?
for
I am so
Jesus Christ Superstar. So I'm going to do one about how shitty religion can be.
You're a recovering Catholic, so you know this stuff.
Can be. I don't think religion's not for me. I'm not saying it's not for everybody, but there is an interesting movie I think to be made and it's been made several times probably, about how, these religious leaders, not the ones that inspired the entire religion, but the ones who tend to carry on a lot of them have other nefarious aims.
All of these televangelists come in and they make these churches in the desert, and then, that's your sequel? What's the
the setup. That's the setup.
Okay.
So, and I would probably do I would actually do the actual rise and fall of Ted Haggard, or somebody like him. Pick your televangelist who was found to be a total fucking hypocrite.
Jim Baker.
And
or
Jim
Jimmy
Baker,
Swaggart.
Or Jimmy Swaggart, Jim Baker would be good because Tammy Faye would be a really good, that's the Mary Magdalene of this particular story.
Is she the Mary Magdalene of this particular story?
Tammy Faye. And then she can have like a song at the end with her gay co-host of her new TV show. And that could be really fun. So it would be the rise and fall, a la Jesus Christ, but this time of a televangelist who's a total hypocrite, but done in the style and costumes of the 1980s. So we'd bring back all of those Dynasty-era shoulder pads, and I think it could be great.
Interesting. Okay.
That's my sequel to Jesus Christ Superstar.
Okay, I'm not sure that it would surpass the original, but good.
I don't know that it would, but for those who liked it, it would be interesting. Definitely, you'd have to get into it.
Okay, so lay it on me. I'm not looking forward to this.
Okay, so your challenge is to create for me a sequel to When Harry Met Sally.
Okay. The challenge here is that the whole movie is about, can there be a happily ever after between two people who started out as friends and then fell in love? And at one point, 10 minutes before the movie's over, you're like, no, there can't be. Then they finally figure out that there can be. And the last scenes is them sitting on the couch like all those other old people were, the couples, talking about their wedding cake. So clearly they got married. Yep. So then you're going, so what would the second part of this be? And I have a choice. Do I go with their kids? Or here's what I think I do. I think When Harry Divorced Sally. Because what I think is that she was really, really OCD. Or anal retentive. Something. She was just really, really neurotic. Yeah. And I think
she played that role a lot.
Really?
Right?
I think that's her
French
default.
Kiss where she's like putting the Q-tip into her computer keyboard.
She's a little default there. But anyway, so I think they get divorced. But it's after they have kids. So they have kids. So they're having to do that whole thing. And I think the challenge would be for them, can former husband and wife remain friends after they've had this relationship and all the children?
Oh,
bam! Drop. Mic drop.
Boom.
Mic drop.
Depressing as hell.
It's awful. Which is why nobody ever made a sequel.
Because nobody wants one.
No, you don't want one. I wouldn't want to see that piece of crap. But I think and also here's the timing of it.
Okay.
In the 80s would have been right on par. That's exactly where they would have gone, is down that dark road and made it that way.
Yeah.
Because when the spinoff, we're talking about the difference between sequels and spinoffs. Like in TV, so there was the Mary Tyler Moore Show. The spinoff was Lou Grant.
Yeah.
That was much darker than Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah.
So I think that's how this would have gone. It would have gone darker. But also, I think that you would have had to include Meg Ryan's facelifts.
Yeah, that would be a plot point. That might have been the straw that broke the camel's back, and why Billy Crystal.
And then Billy Crystal had to keep up. It was awful. Yeah. By the end, they're two different people. What?
Whose ears meet in the back of their heads.
Oh my God! Anyway, so there you go. That's how that was. Challenge accepted.
So I think that what we learned in our first segment here today is that some movies
don't need sequels. And granted, we were doing it right here on the run, but it's sometimes when they take a long, people take a lot of time, which we'll talk about, sequels that took a lot more time than we did to be created
and still suck.
Our final segment comes from our crying episode, where Stacey and Eric talk about things that really bring tears to their eyes. And Stacey shares a story about something she saw that brought her to tears, and this made Eric laugh. It's all right here on the best of POPeration.
Okay, so we are back now. And we're talking about stuff that makes us cry. We've talked about stuff in film. We've talked about
certain television shows that bizarrely made us cry, but there's also other stuff. What other stuff that's made you cry?
So other stuff that makes me cry. I find that most of the time that I do most of my weeping in the popular culture.
That's world. A word that's not used nearly enough. Weep.
Weeping?
Weeping.
Great word.
I think it's great.
It's a great word.
Yeah.
I weep a lot at the theater. Something about things happening live on stage in front of me. And if an actor's really feeling it, and of course, you as an actor know as well as I do the old adage, if you cry, the audience doesn't have to. So when people are going through stuff in front of you and you know that they just want to let loose, or you know they're in pain and they're a good actor and you can just feel it because they are in the room with you. There's something electric there.
Well, you've forgotten that they're an actor.
Yeah.
And suddenly they're a person who is pushing against.
Although in this first example, it's hard to forget that they're actors because it's a big musical and people generally don't walk through the streets singing with a full orchestra backing them up.
Not generally.
So there's a little artificial, but the first 1,000 times I heard it, Les Miserables made me cry like a baby on my own. That little urchin girl who's in love with this man who falls in love with the rich girl, and she does this stupid thing and risks her life so that
that's an amazing song.
So On My Own is the first one that makes me cry because it's all about how she's lonely. The one that brings the mallet down is when she comes back to see him again and she gets riddled with bullets on the way and she's dying in his arms.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
I cry every time.
And what's great about that and what's not cliche about that scene is that he decides that right now what she needs is to hear me say that I love her even though I don't.
Yeah.
And so he just does that for her.
Yep.
It's just this little moment of kindness he delivers to this girl who's had a really rough life, whose parents are assholes.
Oh my gosh.
Funny assholes, but assholes. And it's just and the music is gorgeous. And then when it's all over, there's this, the bright white light, which Les Mis did so well, that original production. Every time somebody died, they'd put this white kind of angelic light on them, and that's how you knew they were gone. And it really just tore me up. The other example, and this is another one kind of back to the theme of, because Les Miserables, miserable is in the title.
And Les for multitudes. So
multitudes of miserables.
Lots of miserables.
Lots of miserables. But the other one that I didn't know a thing about, classic of American theater, but I didn't know much about it when I went, except that there was a non-traditional set, was Our Town, right? And Our Town is a really great play. If all you know about it is that high schools do Our Town, then you really ought to see a good production, because it really is. Because
high schools do it because there's no set.
High schools do it because there's no set. High schools do it because the script says get on 2 step ladders and pretend that they're your windows, and the high school's like, we can do that show, and it's got a huge cast, which makes it great for high schools. But at the end of the third act, spoiler for those who have not seen Our Town, and you really should. You really should see, and they have PBS versions that are on that you can see. There's, in the last act, the young woman, unexpectedly, you don't know that this is where the show is going, she dies. And you're thinking, she's the lead, what is she going to do for all of Act 3? Well, what she does is she sits in a chair, and they basically have these folding chairs that are the cemetery of Grover's Corners. And in the cemetery, there's, her grave, she's the newest person there, and they have a funeral, and she basically watches her own funeral. And then after everyone leaves, she stands up and delivers this just achingly beautiful monologue about how precious life was and how she never really appreciated what she had, the small little details that she'll never be able to experience again. And it just, oh my God, the tears just flowed and flowed and flowed. The first time. I don't know that I would cry again watching it now. I know what to expect. I would still think it was beautiful. And I would actually find it very entertaining because the writing, Thornton Wilder's writing, is just amazing. So yeah, those are 2 other things that make me cry.
Okay. So here, going on the music theme, I will say there is a piece of music that it gets me every time. I have tried to analyze why, and I'm not sure. The national anthem of the United States of America.
Really?
Oh my God. Like a damn sieve. It is ridiculous. The Olympics are especially bad. Because
so when an American wins and you hear the national anthem,
I am crying along with them. I am crying along with them. Now, I do know that when it's not live, you don't have to stand. So Stacey's not standing all the damn time, but there is something about it that is very affecting. I consider myself a very patriotic person. And you start the national anthem, and Stacey turns on the waterworks, and it just affects me. And then there is, the words. And I'm sitting here talking about it. I can feel in the back of my throat. I'm sitting here going, I'm not going to burst into tears during this. This is just ridiculous. But the words are compelling to me, and the music, everything, Yeah. And it's that whole.
I have to tell you,
USA.
I've always been impressed by the fact that our national anthem basically told a story. And if you think about it, it tells a story of a young soldier who is, living through a battle, wondering if the flag is still going to be there the next morning.
It's about hope.
Yeah,
and it
really
is. And I think that's part of why it touches me is that, oh my gosh, I can feel it again. The flag is still there.
Yeah.
That's the flag was still there.
Yeah. My mom has a similar thing, except for her, it's the hymn of the battle hymn of the naval. Do 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 do, that one. And when the words are about God bless those that we've lost, and my dad's still with us, naval officer. We grew up in a Navy family, but I think that my mom, when she hears that, she's just kind of reminded of saying goodbye to her husband, and he's going to be on a boat for 6 months, and we might get 2 phone calls in that 6 months time. And he is, we were never at wartime, but he was wearing the uniform, and we would have, if their war broke out, the ship would have gone right there.
Well, it's funny that you say, and I'm just going to throw this one in. I don't want to necessarily talk about this, but from World War II, I'll Be Seeing You, that song can also do it for me.
Yeah.
Because of what it was written about.
Yes.
And so I've tried to analyze exactly where this came from. I don't know when it started, but I'll tell you right now, I could boo-hoo the hell out of National Anthem. But another thing, and it used to be that certain commercials, and it used to be all Hallmark, because Hallmark used to make some really good
They were good
commercials.
at that. That and Folgers made some good.
Folgers did some good ones as well. You're right. I forgot about them. But Hallmark used to really do some good ones. And around like Father's Day or Mother's Day, they'd come out with the really sappy ones.
But they'd work. They'd be well done. Well done.
Now, who's good now? And some of this is because I am a parent, and I am a parent of a teenager, and is the Subaru commercials right now. It's a lot about parents teaching their kids to drive. And there's one commercial, I don't think it's running right now, but it was one of the first that were going through this, where this father is talking to his daughter, and he's talking to her about driving, and you see him, and then the camera goes to inside the car, and it's this teenage girl. Then you go, and she goes blah blah blah, and the father says, well, I want you to be careful, yada yada. So it's back to a close-up of him. Then you go back to the car, and you see what he sees, and it's this like 7-year-old girl behind the wheel of a car, and I'm like and so anything, and Father of the Bride with Steve Martin back in the day, that one also, that's catnip. The father-daughter relationship stuff, that will knock me out, because I had a really good relationship with my father.
Yeah, you still talk about that a lot.
And so anytime that there is that where the father is looking at the daughter who is older, but what he's seeing is the little girl, from 10 years ago, I'm out. Checked out. I'm done. Stacey's out. She's, poked me with a fork. I will tell you this quick little story about car commercials and me crying. It's right up there with the E.T. story. Now, I usually try to veer away from stories that start out one time when I was pregnant, because when anybody else starts the story that way, again, my brain checks out. So I don't like to do that to people. So one time when I was pregnant, I guess I had to be about 8 months.
Okay. First pregnancy or
first
second?
Pregnancy.
First pregnancy.
And usually, just an FYI, pregnancies last about 9 months. So understand I was very
Spoiler.
was very far along. So my husband and I, we were in our house, and he was in one room watching sports or whatever, and I was in our bedroom. I was laying down and just relaxing, and I was watching something else on the TV in there. And a commercial came on, and this is what my husband heard. And he rushed into the bedroom, and he said, "What's wrong?
You're in labor."
Oh yeah, exactly. Did the water break? What's going on? Oh my gosh. Frank was panicked. And I'm just, and I can't talk. Okay. But I'm pointing at the television. Now, keep in mind that this was before DVRs, or at least we didn't have one. And so I don't think I could pause the television yet. So whatever was on the television is gone. And I'm just pointing at it. And Frank's like, what? Wait, what? What? Are you okay? And I, yes, but on the TV. And he's like, what? Wait, okay, wait. There was something on the TV. Yes. and this is. I'm going to tell the story as I told him, and then I will translate. As soon as the dog, as soon as it wet, and they were dressed up, and they come out, and the dog was okay. All right. That's what Frank heard. It was a commercial for Land Rover, the car. The storyline was that this couple was dressed to the nines in their Land Rover. Are you crying right now?
This is so funny.
They're dressed to the nines in their nice new Land Rover. It is a raining, awful night. They're clearly going out, celebrating. They're in a great mood, but it's just torrential downpour. They're on the highway, and they're coming up, and there's a median, and in the median between the two, it's 4 lanes of traffic on both sides, and just lots of traffic. And in the median, and this torrential downpour, is this dog. I think the dog's name was Marley. It looks like Marley, and the dog wants to cross the street, but he can't because there's all the traffic. And he's shivering, and his hair is just stuck to his body, and he's cold because it's raining. They got out of their car in their beautiful gown and tuxedo. They got drenched, and they got the dog, and they took the dog, God knows where. I don't know. At the end of the commercial. But my thing was they saved the dog.
They saved the dog.
But the dog is what made me cry because he was in the median. And he couldn't get across the street. Did I say it was nighttime? Had I told you that part?
Yes, you did.
And he just stood there shivering and desperately wanting to get across. It was awful. So that is what made me cry. But I will say this. My husband still likes Land Rover commercials just for that. So did that make you cry, Stacey? Did that make you cry? No, it doesn't make me cry anymore. Anyway, but we haven't seen that commercial. That commercial might make me cry again. I don't know.
Okay, well,
but that was
fun.
Let's
see if we can find it. Let's see if we can find it. Let's just look at Land Rover. And when were you pregnant?
Oh,
so how old is
it? It's 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, 2000.
All right. Well, look.
But here's the thing also. I just want to say I am an ugly crier.
Yeah.
I am an awful, awful, ugly crier. So
which
it's
so
not
many
pretty.
people cry so beautifully.
Some do.
And yeah, some know how to just, and it's always that kind of the one gentle tear.
Oh, wasn't it Meryl Streep that somebody said, "I want you to cry," and she said, "Which cheek?"
Which
eye?
No, that was
who was that?
Laurence Olivier, I think, said, which
no, this is a girl. I think this was, maybe it's attributed to Meryl Streep by somebody else. I heard the story, but it was really Lawrence, because Lawrence is also the one who told Dustin Hoffman just to act.
Yeah. We don't want a single solitary tear.
Yeah.
He's like right or left eye.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean that the cliche is that people who cry do so beautifully on screen. There are some good ugly criers though out there.
I tell you that I think the British do it the best because they just don't care. They don't care how they look. I think Americans, we tend to want pretty criers, and so we like our girls to cry pretty. The Brits don't care.
Well, Viola Davis does a really good ugly cry in Fences. Really good ugly cry.
Oh, I have seen that.
Yeah,
yes.
And but who's the best? The best of the best of the best, and you're right, British. Juliet Stevenson. Mm-hmm. From Truly Madly Deeply.
Yes.
Do you remember her?
Yes.
And it's at the beginning of the movie. So you're not
lots of snot.
Lots of snot.
See, even now I remember it was a lot of snot. But they do this a lot. The Brits don't care about snot.
Yeah. And it's also the beginning of the movie. So she wasn't trying to manipulate anybody. It wasn't this,
No.
It was, we were just setting her up as a grieving widow.
She was very grieving.
And this is before Alan Rickman, who we all grieve for now.
Don't even make me cry about that.
Shows up then as the ghost of her her late husband, and they spend the rest of the movie dealing with the fact that, you know, she needs to get over him. But yeah, the very beginning of that movie, the very first thing you see her do is just cry with all the snot and the tears and the dripping down her nose.
And she didn't care. And that was the whole point. She didn't care. This was about grief, and you got that because it wasn't pretty.
Whatever happened to her? She was
She
brilliant.
still does stuff every once in a while.
I haven't seen her in a long time.
Gwyneth Paltrow's Emma. I remember that.
Oh,
and
right.
then every once in a while, she'll show up. She may be in Midsummer this season. I don't. Midsummer Murders this season. I don't know. I'll let you know.
Please do.
Oh, Yvette. So anyway, that's stuff that makes her cry.
Final diagnosis about crying at stuff.
Here's mine. I'm never going to go for entertainment that I know is going to make me cry. I'm never going to go there willingly. But I accept that I may cry sometimes because I will be touched because I care so much about whatever's happening.
Yeah.
Seriously, that dog was wet. But I do think that sometimes those things, that kind of entertainment, people like it because they like the release.
Yeah.
And so I think it's valid. It's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah. So here's what I learned today. I learned something very valuable and important today, Stacey.
I'm listening.
And we're not that far apart, really. We're not, because I also get mad when I feel like someone's just jerking my chain. If I feel like someone's pulling my strings and just saying, now you will cry, then I'm like, no, I will not.
Correct.
But if you get me at a moment where all of a sudden these people, like, you know, Will in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or Buffy, you know, who you usually see in this other light, and you see that there's this whole side to their humanity.
Correct.
That, you know, and it's okay that we show something. And, you know, Buffy had to learn at some point that she can't slay cancer.
Correct.
You know, and so that was just one way of her growth and that kind of coming of age thing. She had to learn that lesson, and we had to learn it with her.
Yes.
And it was well done. And I don't mind shedding a few tears if I feel like they're earned. You know,
Nicely
if you earn
done,
those tears, then it's okay. Then it's okay. Then it's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Good writing, good directing, good acting.
Correct.
I'm there.
Yep.
Sophie's Choice, never again.
Never again. Once was enough.
Okay.
Once was enough.
We'll see you next week.
Well, that's our best of show. I hope you enjoyed our stroll down memory lane. Next week, Stacey and Eric will talk about some of their favorite stand-up comedians. So make sure you check out our website at POPerationRoom.com, where you'll find links to our blog and other fun things like the new POPeration Bingo. If you haven't already subscribed to POPeration at your favorite podcast location, you can do so via iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, and many other locations. Remember, we're also located at POPeration Room on Facebook and on Twitter, so please stop by and let us know how we're doing. If there's something you'd love to hear, please let us know. From all of us at POPeration, we'll see you next time.